Well, you also have to have a place to build housing. They've tried a number of things. I'm just curious about what they're going to do, especially Skinner, given that that last piece of legislation failed that she was involved with. The bond measure to build at transit hubs. Yeah, which would have been everywhere in Albany. There's nowhere in Albany that wouldn't have fallen within that, within the boundaries of that. Not yet.
Yeah,
They have a couple of years.
it's in there. It's in like this one.
It was a bond measure that the county passed.
Yep. There's a good chunk of money in there.
There has been very little information about,
Supposedly, the council is in secret meetings
Secret negotiations.
what they're gonna, yeah, well, we don't know. But supposedly, they're working in secret on something that they can't, tell us yet.
which means they're probably negotiating with a developer.
I don't know.
I mean, that's what else,
Yeah.
yeah. They couldn't have meetings about nothing. I mean, that would be.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're gonna do nothing, but
I've been to a lot of meetings about nothing.
Well, that's true. I realized after I said that, there was a problematic statement.
Find lots of things not to do.
I suspect that they're probably negotiating with developer or developers about something or other. There is a piece of land that they've been looking at
you wanna check on Isabel?
that adjoins the new park.
Down near the freeway.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Pierce Street,
She had to have turned that on.
which is here, I hope.
She's usually always here.
Tara, so when are you leaving, do you know?
I will be leaving, end of August.
Okay, does anyone in your family still wanna do the chicken coop thing?
Yeah, I think so.
They do?
If there's a spot, I'd love to
I still
talk
have
about
your
it.
name on the list, and if you would be coming up, there's a spot coming up.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk to them to like
Okay,
confirm,
all
but
right,
yeah,
so
that'd be super cool.
text you about it,
Okay,
and then you can let me know if you're still interested in.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
I'll give you the details.
Cool.
It's on Talbot Street now.
yeah, that's what I remember. Is it up near, is it up
Co-op.
is it up near like Gilman and Talbot?
It's,
Like which side?
It's 2 blocks off Marin towards
Oh, yeah.
Berkeley. It's right on the creek is right there beside it.
Is it at the place that used to have pigs? That house?
Somebody told me they had pigs there
Yeah,
once.
so it is that property. I used to live over there. Yeah, we'd always go visit the pigs.
I don't think it's legal to have pigs, is it?
I don't know. Probably
I don't
not.
think so.
They had to.
We had to get a
License, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can have.
Berkeley allows goats, but I don't think Albany does. Albany also doesn't allow roosters.
right. No,
There was an attempt a few years ago to allow goats because somebody had a bunch of goats.
Yeah.
pygmy goats are so cute.
There's a guy who would walk them around
They're
on like
noisy.
leashes. It was really funny.
Yeah, they're really dirty.
Yeah, but they're really loud too.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do attract other
There she is.
critters that are less desirable.
Well, that's the thing with chickens. You have to build rats.
Tell us when you're ready. Okay, it's just a little after 7:30, and it's time to call to order our meeting for Thursday, June 7th, Social and Economic Justice Commission. Isabel, could you please take the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Bear,
Present?
Commissioner Marks, Commissioner Darrow,
Here.
Commissioner Grossman,
Here?
and Chair Deal.
Here. Okay, so our first item is approval of the action minutes from our last meeting. Did anybody have any questions on that or comments?
No.
Okay.
Good to me.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Any public comment for an item that's not on the agenda?
Oh, don't come up too quickly.
Okay. There's maybe some announcements from committee members, but I just wanted to remind everybody of how we proceed at our meetings. Please, just one person talking at a time, and I see it as my role as the chair to facilitate that, and also to facilitate participation from the attendees. And I know, unfortunately, I have this habit of forgetting to call them up, and I appreciate people reminding me. But if you could remind me, and then I will address it, because we don't want to have like 2 or 3 people trying to facilitate the public attendance. So, so that's my announcement. Do we have any other announcements?
I think given that we're the Social and Economic Justice Commission, it would be really remiss if we did not take notice of the fact that our current national government has been cited by the United Nations as a violator of human rights. And I'm hoping that we can consider what we might do as a community to respond in some way to what's going on in terms of families being separated and children being incarcerated.
Okay. So maybe we can get back to that when we set up the agenda for our next meeting. Margie?
I wanted to report now on what happened Monday night at the city council meeting.
Sorry, Margie, could you use your mic?
Thank you. Regarding the soda tax,
Oh, yeah.
which this committee dealt with.
Is that on the agenda, Margie?
It is not on the agenda, and that's why I'm doing it under announcements.
Okay, thank you.
Although if I knew it was going to be on the city council agenda, I would have put it on the agenda. So what the city council did Monday night was so far, for over a 12-month period, the city has raised $290,885 on the soda tax, which is about $90,000 more than they anticipated. So there were 5 different areas that were identified, like the water stations and the classes and that kind of thing. So those came to a total of $200,000. The city is having to pay for crossing guards. There was some discussion at the city council whether paying for school crossing guards was a school district responsibility or a city responsibility. So there was a little discussion about that and who should raise the money and where should it come from. The council voted, I believe, to, in the summary, this was from the meeting Monday night, if anybody wants it, it's the school guard crossing contract proposal. It is, the staff provided a status to council recommending the council allocate $82,000 to maintain our 6 current crossing guard positions through the end of fiscal year 18-19. So when the council made the motion to approve the money, they didn't say how much money they were approving. So that's why it's unclear to me whether they're taking out just the $82,000 or if there's going to be more, because the guards cost more. This is just the cost for those 6 guards through the end of the year. So one of the things that was brought up was that ideally with the soda tax, we hope that it's going to go down. I mean, we're hoping that with education and so to a concern that I have, and I think Kathy has it, I don't know about the other members of the committee, is that to spend the money on something that's an ongoing expense and is probably going to be increasing, I don't think that's the best precedent for the money. I also think we need to keep faith with the voters of Albany. I mean, I was one of the people out there working to get this thing passed, like Tara was, and, you know, telling people how it was going to be spent. And I understand that the city council can do a really great spin on the fact that it's children's health to help them cross the street safely. And I, you know, I agree with that. But I think we should look more carefully at if this is a good use of this money, or if we need a parcel tax, or, you know, if this is the way we should be spending this money. So it appears, and then what the council said was that they were going to prioritize the items that were approved. Number one, the number one priority is the 7 water bottle filling stations. The number 2 priority is the crossing guards. And then the rest of these, although there's money for all of this stuff, because we got more money than we thought. So that's where we're at. And there was a stipulation that it will be looked at in the future. It's not going to be an ongoing expense, but I think we need to, as a community, talk about it a little more about, is this how we want to spend this? So is it a good way to do it? So that's my report on what happened.
And since this is under announcements, we aren't allowed to hold discussions or ask questions, but we'll address it again when we talk about the agenda, or next time. Okay. So our first item is, or wait, I need to know if there's any announcements from staff.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, all right, so the unfinished business, item 7.1, inclusivity, and I'm assuming Tara and Bart were going to talk about this draft.
We prepared a draft letter as we agreed at the last meeting. We don't know for a fact that the city is going to do a survey, but in the discussion of the ranked choice voting and the question of whether there is in fact people who are excluded or from the voting process or haven't been able to be effectively involved, the city talked about a study, and we suspect it might need to include at least some resident input. So we prepared a letter which suggests that that study occur and that it be expanded to include a variety of issues of inclusivity. As you all know, we were assigned this objective to continue to promote community-wide inclusivity without any kind of definition or parameters in terms of what that meant or what we were supposed to be doing about it. So we've struggled, as you all know, for a long time trying to figure out what we can do. We've talked about having meetings in the community, but we haven't, there isn't staff support to do the organization work that needs to be done, with Isabel carrying multiple jobs at this point. So we're asking the council to move ahead with that study. We'd like to be involved in identification of items on the study, and we see that as the beginning of a process of identifying what people's concerns are, so that we don't set out to do something about inclusivity without understanding what people feel about it. So we've submitted this letter for your consideration, and our recommendation at this point is that we proceed with this letter to council.
Mm-hmm. Just to add on to that, I think previously we were operating under the assumption that there was a survey or poll of sorts that was going to be sent out, and our objective was to broaden the focus of that beyond voting and what they had originally discussed would be the focus of the survey. But upon further looking into what they had actually said, as far as I'm aware, they hadn't actually stated that they were going to send out a survey. And so upon learning that, we're now kind of urging them to do that. And it was likely that they were going to anyway. but that's a part of it. So if you guys have read it and have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, let us know.
Margie?
No.
Nicole?
I think it's a good letter. I think just, I'm gonna, I think, restate what you guys have already explained, just to confirm that it's correct. So the idea is that if the city is doing this survey and study relating to issues regarding the Voting Rights Act, that they add questions that would help guide this commission in its efforts to improve inclusivity within the city.
Right, and ultimately the goal is to elicit direct feedback from the community, but we feel that it would be best to get an idea through a survey of the issues that are present in the community before we sort of open it up in a forum style.
Well, in response to that last comment, I wonder how long this process will take, and I don't necessarily want to, I don't necessarily think we should wait to do this before doing anything else. But I see why we may be able to solicit other channels of input while this process is ongoing.
The problem with doing anything else, we've explored various options, is that we need the staff support to
yeah.
pull it off,
Yeah.
and that isn't available.
Well, I know we discussed this before, and there were some obstacles, but I wonder if, rather than, I know we talked about holding a meeting at the library that people find to be more accessible, or at the other locations in the city, but what about having at one of our regular meetings, setting aside, a half an hour to 45 minutes, and us individually trying to do outreach to different constituencies that might want to just sort of have a public, open forum.
We could do that. My own feeling is that it would probably not be a very representative turnout if we did that, because the people we need to reach are the people we're probably least aware of. And I think we'd have a better experience if we could start with something that we can give people to look at and talk about,
Yeah.
rather than say, come and tell us what your
Right.
issues are. I think, that's a little too wide open.
Okay.
It's a fair point, though. I mean, we'd hope that the survey process would be relatively expedited, but you never know.
Yeah.
And if it isn't, I think we can reconsider. If it looks like it's going to take forever, then we can do something, I think, on
Great.
our own.
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving on with this rather than trying to kind of piecemeal, as we had been talking about. I just had a couple of comments on the third paragraph in the last line. I would include forms of civic involvement such as serving on the city council, city commissions, and participation in civic forums and events.
Okay.
Add council.
Yeah, add council, please.
Yeah. I thought that was implied by the voting, but that's all right.
Okay.
No point. There's no reason.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
There's no reason we can't be.
Yeah, might as well just be explicit.
Yeah.
And then the next paragraph, such discussions could lead to the development of an inclusionary action plan to be developed by the city. So you're saying that we would turn this over to the staff and the council, or would we still have the lead on it?
I didn't suggest anything specific there, because
Oh, okay.
The term city, I think, is meant to be inclusive of everything
Okay.
representative, but I could see how.
Could we say something like the appropriate city organizations or elements or whatever? 'Cause, right, when I think of city, then I think city council. And what do you think, Margie? You're shaking your head.
Oh, I don't think it would hurt to add it in there, right? So,
I mean, I don't think it clarifies anything to say the appropriate, organization.
I mean,
'cause
we could just not capitalize city.
Yeah, that might be the better thing.
Okay, yeah. that's, okay.
Well, city capitalized means simply because we're referring to Albany, obviously, but,
Yeah, but,
I just don't, if you, yeah, you know, we don't have to decide right this minute. I just can't think of a way to word that isn't just as vague. So,
I think just decapitalizing it would kind of take the emphasis off of government and back on the entity in which we live.
People.
What if it just says to be developed within the city?
Oh, yeah, that's-
Yeah, that's good.
okay, that's, okay.
okay. That's all the comments that I had. So what would be the next step?
So we're proposing that the council, that the commission endorse this and send it to council.
Okay.
We need a motion.
I move for the commission to endorse this letter and send it to council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All righty.
Thank you guys for doing.
Thank you for writing the letter.
Yeah. Okay, so our next item is an update from our rent review subcommittee on the rent review program ordinance. And Margie and I have been going to lots of meetings, and we went to the city council, a special session on rent review on May 7th, and we voiced again our concerns about the rent review ordinance based on what we had talked about here. They needed to clarify some language regarding notification of a rent review. They had to consider conditions of the property in the mediation process. We asked for them to shorten the effective period from 5 months to something around 3 months. And we asked them to add a just cause eviction as in addition to the retaliatory eviction clause. And I don't think that they really addressed any of that from my review of the new ordinance, the rewrite of it. So on the 4th, which was this Monday, Margie and I went again to the city council meeting, and there was not a special session regarding rent review. It was just on their regular agenda for approval. And prior to that, there was time for public comment, and Margie and I declined to comment. We felt like we had already, provided our input. But however, the landlords continue to express their concerns. They were, again, confusing rent review with rent control. They believe that rent control leads to the deterioration of the rental base in communities where it's in place. And they also believe that the rental crisis is over. And however, the council did approve the ordinance, and it's to be effective November 2nd. So we
We
felt,
have rent review in Albany.
yes.
Almost.
Almost. So, any questions? Or-
Would you be able to clarify what you meant by the position of the housing providers that the rental crisis is over? Like, what does that mean?
Well, remember when we first brought up this issue, we had the meetings and we had several tenants come in and talk about how their rent was being increased by 50%, 100%, 30%, doubled, or, and a lot of people were having to move, or people were witnessing the loss of their neighbors because they had to move. And apparently, the inflation regarding rent has slowed down, but already the rents are so incredibly high that even if it's slowed down, any additional cost will be burdensome, and we have no idea what's going to be happening in the future. So Peter Moss one of the city council members said, well, the idea behind this is to help stabilize it. And that may be what's happening now that people see the rent review. But again, all we're doing is asking the landlords to talk with the tenants.
And there was no addressing of just cause at the meeting?
No, we brought it up the last 2 or 3 meetings, and there was, they did not embrace the idea. And,
Well, it was something that the city left off
Yeah.
right,
subject purposefully, I believe. And so, of course, it didn't come up.
yeah, we never got any clarification on who made the decision or when that decision was made, but we suspect that it happened at the staff level in private without public review.
Good to know.
I have to say that council did have the option to include just cause eviction at one of their meetings, and they chose not to. So this was not a decision made by staff. It was presented to council, and council chose to continue with the current rent
That
review
it
ordinance.
Was it made at a public meeting?
Yes, it was.
Public meeting?
Yes.
Because we checked the videos and we didn't find it.
It was part of the staff report, and in the staff report, and it was an earlier staff report, staff mentioned that if council wanted to pursue just cause evictions to basically direct staff to do so, and they chose not to.
They didn't direct you, but they did.
No, they did not direct us to look into just cause evictions.
But they didn't direct you not to either.
It was an option in the staff report, and they chose not to.
Okay. It's semantics. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a report from staff on rapid rehousing.
So just wanted to bring to your attention that there's been some rapid rehousing policy adopted by Alameda County, and that the City of Albany program will use those policies as we help people get into housing. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through the document, but basically rapid rehousing is what we do here in Albany, and with the aid of a housing navigator, and we provide supportive services along with some subsidy if needed, and most of our clients do need a subsidy, but because of the increase in rents and how much rents are really expensive, and the lack of resources available, there was a need for policies in place to make sure that people that we do house with those short-term subsidies are able to remain housed once the subsidy ends. So that's the purpose of this policy. I guess the things to note is that the client will work with the housing navigator and create a plan, and once that plan has been approved by the manager of the program, then the housing navigator will start working with that client to find housing. And the subsidy is, the length of the subsidy is going to be up to 9 months, and can be renewed if needed, but basically the plan will address a 9-month subsidy. And then you can see that there's some rental assistance amounts that can be contributed per month, and that basically somebody coming in that has no income probably wouldn't qualify for a rapid rehousing program, because for them to be able to go from zero, for 100% subsidy to zero subsidy in 9 months, would probably be quite impossible. And so those people, the people who are in that situation are referred to the Housing Resource Center, the coordinated entry system, which has access to stronger and deeper subsidies and more long-term services. But then they're put on the list established based on the priority need. And then they have to wait for the services. But in the meantime, the housing navigator can continue to work with them to keep them comfortable, give them access to services until they're housed.
Okay, I have a couple, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
A couple of questions.
Okay, let him go.
First of all, how much money is tied up in this program?
Well, this policy pertains to boomerang funds,
Right.
and I think the county, the Board of Supervisors allowed a certain amount of boomerang funds for housing subsidies, and I don't want to say a number right now because I just can't. I'm not sure.
I'm just curious, because when you look at this and you sort of think about the reality of what's out there, the percentage of people who are currently homeless who would be in a position in 9 months to be able to fully assume any of the rents that are available around here is a very narrow slice of the population of people who are homeless. And it's true that they can, if they don't fit this qualification, they can go to the Housing Resource Center, but the problem is they have to have been homeless for a certain period of time to be qualified for that. So I'm just concerned that a lot of people can fall easily into the gap between these policies, and I wonder whether directing a significant amount of money to the very small number of people for whom would be qualified for this is really worth it when you consider the amount of need there is in terms of people who are homeless and have no likelihood of being able to pay rent. So I'm not asking you to answer that because it's a very complicated question, but I really think one needs to consider whether this is really a meaningful policy, given the reality out there.
It's for the whole county, right?
So this is specifically for boomerang funds, county boomerang funds, but cities who have programs are adopting these. We're basically asking BFHB to use that policy to house people that we serve in Albany. Because we even have less money than the county. We basically have, we got the grant, the emergency impact grant of $25,000, and then we're going to council with another budget of about 25. So it's very little, and we're proposing to house 4 to 6 people.
In Albany?
Well, 4 to 6 people who are homeless in Albany, but not necessarily house them in Albany.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Aren't you?
who is the housing navigator?
Well, currently it's Robbie Montoya.
Okay, so she will continue to be the housing navigator?
Right, she's the
Okay.
City of Albany's housing navigator. The terms are changing because we're aligning ourselves with the new terms created through the coordinated entry system. So for all of Alameda County, we're just trying to be coordinated and using the similar terms, so there's no disruption in service or misunderstanding.
It's a
So-
federal term, actually, housing navigator.
Excuse me?
It's federal.
Yes, it's all based on the HUD mandate.
So in here, when it talks about eligibility, it says literally homeless individuals or families who have completed the county assessment tool and are prioritized for an intervention. So I have a question. If there was an Albany family that got a raise in their rent and wanted to take advantage of the rental assistance amounts, Could they fill out the county assessment tool and be eligible for these funds?
No, because they're not homeless. But the city of Albany will have a small pot of money for prevention. So what you're describing is prevention money. So we will have a small pot for prevention.
Okay, and then under allowable rent, it says, "We will use a rent reasonableness standard, but more importantly, we'll use a client reasonableness standard." Now, what does that mean?
I think that means that, the client's ability to pay rent will be used.
I have one hopefully simple question. You said that the client and the housing navigator will work together to come up with a plan that will then be approved or reviewed by the manager. Is the manager, what?
It's the CES manager. So at the coordinated entry system level, that would be the manager, the person that Robbie reports to.
And is that a county person or a city person?
No, it's a city of Berkeley. Basically, it's a coordinated entry system person who is probably funded with county money, but is housed in Berkeley.
Tara?
Yeah. How would one be able to find or access the resources? Are they doing their own outreach, or is there somewhere that people can go to?
Well, as part of her role, the housing navigator's role, there's outreach.
Okay.
So there's outreach done weekly at different
The county,
locations
wherever.
within the city. Well, for Albany, it would be within the city of Albany. And, as she meets people, she basically discusses the services available and sees whether or not they're interested and if they would be eligible.
And are they going to be keeping track county-wise of cities and like the number of people, et cetera, for each one?
Well, BFHP has, we have a contract with them, and in that contract, there's some reporting requirements that they provide on a quarterly
like
basis.
quarterly or-
And I provide those to you every quarter.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I have one more. I don't know if you know the answer, but is there a projection on the amount of time it would take between initial contact between the client and the housing navigator to moving in?
It really depends. Yeah, it just depends.
Okay.
Well, I noticed that there's a lot of different programs. There's Everyone Home, there's Berkeley. Aren't they supportive of a couple programs that we tap into, like Berkeley Housing and Mental Health? And, it seems like there's all these different programs, and I really don't understand kind of how they interact with each other and how, one covers this and another one covers that, or maybe there's some overlap. So it would be really helpful to me, maybe other people, if we could see some kind of a chart that shows what these different programs offer, and then
Overlap. And
they overlap, or if one doesn't cover it, then you go to this one, kind of, a chart, a map of our resources.
That would be great indeed. But it all depends on the funding and who is funding for what service. So you're right, it is a little bit confusing because there's some parts that are being done by Berkeley Mental Health, other services are being done by the coordinated entry system, some of it are done by the Albany Project Hope program, and then there's the county services. So it is, I don't know of any chart at this point that outlines all of the different agencies' services, and it changes every RFP process, and so it can be a little challenging to create, and that's probably why it hasn't been created.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that we create one.
Well, what might be a way to do that would be to ask a Berkeley Food and Housing Project to give us information and, about what are the various sources of funding that they're tapping and serving Albany people.
They basically, our contract is it's basically CDBG funding and general fund funding, and then we just got a grant from Alameda County for housing subsidies. So that's what they're using from Albany for the City of Albany program. However, Albany residents who are homeless have access to county-funded programs that are located or can be accessed through the hub, through the coordinated entry system.
It would surprise me, maybe Robbie would know, but it would surprise me if in order for them to function, they have to know how this all works. So there must be some document that they have that lays it all out. And maybe we could just ask Robbie.
I mean, Robbie uses an outreach, it's not a chart, it's more like, there's the service and who provides those services. It's a double-sided sheet that she hands out to people when she does outreach. So, I mean, that would probably be a good start.
Yeah. Nicole?
Is there one person on city staff, other than the navigator, who has responsibility for, like, reviewing and entering into contracts with housing providers and things like that, that would just have?
Well, right now it's kind of shared. I oversee the Berkeley Food and Housing Project contract, and I'm the one who goes and meets with Berkeley Mental Health staff. I go to the county meetings. The housing piece is in community development, so the staff there takes care of the housing piece. Like housing, like the development of affordable housing. And
It seems like it would be useful to, whether we are the ones that do it or not, I mean, get a sense of how much the city spends on housing and where, who the various entities are that we contract with to provide housing other than Berkeley Food and Housing, and what, I mean, I think I'm just now repeating what was already.
they're the only ones. We only contract with Berkeley Food and Housing Project for homeless outreach and engagement. We also provide funding to Eden INR because they administer the 211 line, and we do have an invoice that comes from Everyone Home because we've adopted their program. So right now, that's basically
Okay.
what it is, yeah.
So Eden Housing, Everyone Home, and Berkeley, what is it?
Berkeley Food and Housing Project.
Berkeley Food and Housing Project. So we could at least start with the requesting that sheet that Robbie works off of, and work from there to try and pull together the picture.
And what about the, who administers, or whether it's still being administered at all, the shared housing for people that had been living in the bulb? I know there
That's through our BFHP contract.
okay. I know I've heard comments from people I know who live in Berkeley who aren't aware that Albany pays Berkeley for, which I assume is the case, for having Berkeley take care of provide services to our homeless population.
No, we don't pay the city of Berkeley. We have a contract with Berkeley Food and Housing Project, which is a nonprofit agency their offices are in Berkeley, but the nonprofit agency, it's a nonprofit agency. We do collaborate with the city of Berkeley for the hub, for the coordinated entry system, because the North County coordinated entry system includes the cities of Berkeley, Albany, and Emeryville. So we do collaborate.
Okay.
The three cities collaborate in that effort.
Well, there's
but we
a
do not.
perception among non-Albany, our neighbors who think that we just refer everybody to Berkeley and Richmond and don't take care of anything ourselves. So,
Yeah, well,
Kind of looks like that sometimes.
well, I know on the City of Albany website, when you click on affordable housing, it says, see something about Berkeley. It might be Berkeley Food and Housing, but I was like, oh, well, I guess.
Berkeley Food and Housing Project is not the city of
Yeah.
Berkeley, and And the Berkeley Mental Health provides some services to Albany.
Yeah.
But that's because of the way the funding flows from the state.
Yeah.
There's a mental health district.
Right.
That includes Albany, so that we're
Yeah.
not paying them.
Right, and it makes sense for, not, we don't want to chop everything up into tiny pieces and have people get lost in that web, but, yeah. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Okay. Started to get a better picture. So the sheet from Robbie would be a good start, I think. Because it's nice when we get all of these different things to review, that we kind of understand how the pieces fit together. Otherwise, it's kind of meaningless, to me anyway. So does anybody else have anything on this?
Assuming the pieces fit together.
Well, if they don't, then that's a good thing to know too, right? If there's some gaps. Anybody else have anything? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is this proposal by several state senators to, it's a budget proposal for $5 billion to address homelessness and affordable housing in the state. And you got a link to the press release. It's from May 16th. And this is to build on another Senate bill that Senator Skinner and Senator Beals proposed. It was a $2 billion proposal to direct funds to cities and counties for homeless and affordable housing projects. The bill would help California deal with the impact of cuts to federal housing programs and support the call from the mayors of 11 of California's largest cities. And I just thought you might want to be interested in knowing which cities that was: Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Diego, San Jose, San Francisco, Fresno, Bakersfield, Long Beach, Oakland, Anaheim, and Santa Ana. So as you can see, the whole state, not just the Bay Area, is experiencing increased homelessness and, the affordable housing pinch. And, I actually called Nancy Skinner's Oakland office to find out if there were any additional updates to this effort, and they haven't gotten back to me with anything, so I'm assuming that, no new steps have been taken. But, apparently this is something that would be voted on by the Senate, and, we can't really weigh in legally on one way or the other, but I think I could probably say that it could actually have an impact on the situation without judging it. So, stay tuned if I hear anything more, and you may hear things as well.
I read something, I'm not sure if this is correct, but it was, I believe it was a statement one of Berkeley's city council members made, was that about 700 million of that 5 billion would be allocated for city grants that California cities could apply for, and so that's one way it could directly impact Albany if that is the case.
Right, yeah, and has anybody on the city council mentioned this?
No, I haven't heard it mentioned at any of the council meetings right now.
So one of us might go to the council meetings and bring it to their attention. And I would do that, actually, during the public comment period.
There may be an opportunity to, it doesn't say when this proposal will be heard in Sacramento, but there's always public comment at those hearings, that if folks individually wanted to go to Sacramento and just as,
Citizens.
Yeah, and I think you can say, based on what we hear and information we get about homelessness in our community, these funds are needed
Right.
very much. And
Not representing the
Yeah.
city or SEJC.
But I think you can tap into your expertise as a commissioner. You can say that your perspective is informed by being a commissioner, but you're there representing yourself as an individual.
Oh, I think that's what we do at the council meetings,
Yeah.
too. Yeah. We don't want to break the Brown Act. Okay, so I think that's it. Was there anything else on the agenda?
That's it.
Did I miss
That's it.
anything?
About the
New
next
future.
agenda.
Anybody from the public? Have a comment? Okay.
I just want to bring to your attention that the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 3rd, which is right before the holiday. I am not going to be in town that week, so we can, we can either cancel the meeting, or I can look and see if there's availability of rooms, and depending on when you're available also, and get back to you on that.
So you need to
it does-
reschedule for when you are here? Is that-
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd rather reschedule than cancel if possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
okay.
We usually, one of the summer months, we usually,
It's usually
August.
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 August is,
we might think about doing July and having a meeting in August.
August is really the month that there's no commission meetings, so we really, the city we go dark in August, so,
I don't think we really have the choice.
yeah, it would either be a later meeting in July, if the room is, if we can find the room, an availability for the room, and it works with your availability also.
Would you be able to
quorum.
email us potential dates if you find anything? Okay, yeah, I could do it that way.
All right. And Tara, when will be your last,
If we don't have a meeting in August, it will be July.
July will be your last meeting. So can we start putting out the word to find a replacement for Tara?
Well, Tara, you have to notify your council member.
I will do
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
depending on when we schedule the meeting.
Who appointed you?
Nick Pilch.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay,
Hard to
so,
replace you.
Yes.
exactly. What do we want on the agenda?
I would like to have a lengthened discussion about the soda tax update.
Okay.
I would like to see a discussion about immigration policy. And it may be interesting, particularly because there's a kind of a rebel action going on in the House at the moment to pass an immigration bill. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But I really think we should consider what the city might do in relation to the current policy of separating parents and children.
The only thing I would say about that is it's not on our work plan, so do we need to,
No, we don't.
Is there,
I have a question about, do you think it would be useful and/or possible to have somebody from the police department come just give us a report on what, if any, interaction they have with ICE, whether it's ICE asking them to do things that city policy prohibits, or,
Well, again, it's not on your work plan, so if this is something you want to, dive into, you would have to amend your work plan, and it would need to be approved by council. So if this is a new interest for the commission, that would be the first thing to do. And then, once it's approved, then we could look into that.
But if we wanted to
it
have,
fits in with inclusivity as a
yeah,
topic.
it does. And if we just, I mean, if we have a work plan in terms of things that we dive into seriously, but if we want to have a discussion about an issue, I don't think we need to amend the work plan every time something comes up.
no, but what we're talking about is if we have follow-up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it would be, if it's just a discussion, but no action, or, potentially you could do it, yes. But if it's something that you want to take on as an issue and then, yes.
I
Or,
think we need to discuss first whether we, be able to have an opportunity to have a discussion in order to determine whether to put it on the work plan. So it seems like,
But there is a time for that, as far as when the commission works on their work plan, right? So you'll start working, I think, on your next work plan in the fall.
Yeah.
So you could start, you could maybe start a list of potential issues, and that would be part of it. And then you could spend some of your fall meetings discussing what items you would like on the work plan. And we would make that an item, work plan, discussion on about next work plan. So that would be the way I would suggest you go about it.
yeah, I think we should also look at whether or not it's really part of our inclusivity objective. I could see very well how it could address that. So,
So under that, under the inclusivity, I would like to, I understand from Facebook that there's a move to pay, some members, some students, I guess, got to pay out from the high school or from
Settlement, yes.
a settlement. And so there's a move afoot to pay people who did not get a payout, to collect money to pay those individuals. And I would like, under inclusivity, to understand what's going on with that.
I can talk about that if you'd like.
Okay, could we put that on the agenda? Because it certainly is part of the inclusivity, and I feel like it shouldn't be something that's just on Facebook. I mean, but I don't know enough about it so I would like to see it on the agenda to,
so can you give a?
Yeah, I can give a
report? Okay.
update on that.
I hadn't heard anything about that. Okay,
don't you read your Facebook?
I read my Facebook, I don't read your Facebook.
Well, don't you want to be my friend?
do we need to talk about rent review again?
I hope
we can
not.
table that until it,
Yeah, let's hope
Update.
let's hope it's
Okay.
over.
Nothing more to say.
Can you be sure to let us know when there's any more activity going on with the city council regarding rent review? And also soda tax, if that comes back up on their agenda. We're counting on you, Isabel.
Well, the solar tax will come back as part of the budget review at their next meeting, June 18th.
June 18th? Okay.
We're in just an observation, if I may, that I think we're in a strange situation. We've pretty much finished our work plan. It's 8:30 and we've got nothing to talk about. And I don't have an objection to that, but I mean, it does become a question of, whether there are some things we should be attending to. At least we should have a conversation about what are some of the social and economic justice issues that are surrounding us that are not on our work plan, and do we want to ask for permission to act on any of them?
Okay, so new issues could be one of our agenda items.
would it be improper to, the discussion about the Albany High issue, just, and as part of our discussion of whether to add it to the agenda next time, I think we could have a fairly quick conversation that might help us make that decision or not.
It does fit under inclusivity.
Yes.
Yeah.
But okay. I think we can just get an answer to your question right now.
Okay, so I'm wondering, is it something that we should be supporting, paying these other people or
This is
not?
not on the agenda right now, so you can't start talking. And we're at the last item, which is future agenda items, so.
Which is why I was saying, can we discuss whether it should be a future agenda item?
Well, I think the chair can make that decision.
But can we give input?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much we can
It's
do
been
about it, but I can
requested.
give information about what's going on.
Okay, so we're just sticking to new agenda items. Anybody else have any items? I don't think so. So what I have right now is this soda tax with an update, two inclusivity items, immigration policy and how that could impact Albany, and payout to Albany High School students. That's regarding the incident at the high school, okay? And then new issues.
Rather than say payout, could we just say status update on high school? I think that would be. The other thing that strikes me is we did have a presentation on the senior center.
Yeah.
But we have on our agenda, on our work plan, the issue of,
Senior needs.
people aging
Okay.
in place. And we haven't really talked about whether there's anything beyond what's available at the senior center that should be done.
Okay, so aging in place? All right. Okay, so I think we've got,
That's enough.
It's a good number.
yeah. All right, anything else? All right, I'm now calling our meeting closed.
Okay.
See you next month, after Isabel finds a date. And you'll send suggestions to us so we can